Have you ever stood before a vast, whispering abyss and realized everything we were taught is a carefully edited lie? Deep within the sun-scorched basalt canyons of Ethiopia lies an anomaly that shatters the orthodox timeline of human history. For decades, a heavy, calculated silence has shrouded these coordinates, protecting centuries of historical dogma from total collapse. Look closely at these sheer stone cliffs, where ancient crimson pigments have bled into the solid rock for millennia. We begin our silent journey in the hollowed valleys of Lalibela, staring down at structures buried deep inside the earth. Mainstream historians claim 11 monolithic churches were carved using mere chisels and hammers within just 24 years. But advanced structural mathematics reveals a darker, far more terrifying geometric reality hidden inside the stone. To excavate tens of thousands of tons of basalt rock without collapsing the roofs requires complex, three-dimensional engineering. Notice the impossible vertical cuts, perfectly smooth and devoid of any primitive tool markings or strike fractures. Yet, when surveying the entire surrounding landscape, there is absolutely no trace of any excavated stone debris. Tens of thousands of tons of solid volcanic rock vanished completely into thin air, as if vaporized from existence. The academic world remains dead silent, leaving these underground monoliths standing as mathematical ghosts in the wilderness. But the deepest secret of Lalibela lies beneath the floors, where a vast, forbidden subterranean labyrinth crawls into darkness. Unsanctioned seismic scans revealed these narrow tunnels extend for miles, connecting to an older, undocumented network. What primordial entities resided within this sealed underworld before the dawn of our known history? Mainstream geological consensus operates on the comforting premise that tectonic movements require millions of years to alter landscapes. Yet, staring across the gargantuan cracks of the Great Rift Valley, one encounters geometry too deliberate to be accidental. Why do certain deep strata layers exhibit a sudden, unnatural fusion of highly concentrated magnetic basalt elements? The sheer scale of these ancient mountain gashes reveals a massive anomaly that completely defies orthodox tectonic subduction models. As the harsh African sun moves across the vast landscape, it illuminates prehistoric scars etched deep into primordial rock. These are not mere cracks, but colossal, artificial deep-cut alignments that span across hundreds of miles of untamed territory. When satellite instruments first mapped these jagged rifts, their precise linear intersections sent shockwaves through academic institutions. A persistent, absolute blackout on independent regional geological surveys has successfully kept these monumental anomalies well hidden. Look at how the sunlight breaks over these vast canyons, exposing massive mineral veins that run perfectly straight. No primitive river system could have eroded these stubborn basalt plateaus into such flawlessly geometric, right-angled valley walls. Instead, the physical evidence suggests a high-energy planetary displacement event that completely rewrites the history of our crust. The academic narrative claims this land remained untouched by any advanced heavy engineering until the modern industrial era. But beneath the shifting dust and heavy sediment, the bedrock preserves a darker, far more challenging structural truth. Massive, perfectly leveled stone terraces plunge hundreds of feet downward into the absolute quiet of unmapped subterranean abysses. What forgotten forces operated at this planetary scale, long before the first recorded human civilizations ever drew breath? The narrative tightens as we venture into the pristine, unmapped plateaus of Yeha, where staggering masonry defies historical logic. Standing silent against the harsh African sky is the Great Temple, the oldest standing structural enigma on the continent. For 2,500 years, these massive, interlocking limestone blocks have resisted the violent tremors of the Rift Valley. Look at the flawless seams where these colossal multi-ton stones meet. No mortar or binding paste was ever utilized. The precision of these straight-edge slices is so absolute that not a single razor blade can breach the seam. Mainstream historical records offer no explanation for how such monumental stones were squared and fitted with zero tolerance. Instead, academic institutions attribute this advanced architectural feat to a rudimentary, localized tribal kingdom lacking iron tools. But a darker structural parallel emerges when comparing this masonry to the megalithic fortresses of Sacsayhuaman in Peru. How did cultures separated by vast oceans share the exact same highly specific, anomalous dry stone interlocking technique? Look closely at the lower foundation levels, where dark, unidentified iron-like residue coats the ancient stone joints. This mineralized glazing points to a forgotten high-heat thermal process, rather than manual stone abrasion or copper saws. Why has the deeper geological stratigraphy beneath Yeha been abruptly closed off from independent international research teams? The official archives claim the closures protect local heritage, yet the growing empirical discrepancies cannot be silenced. We are looking at the physical remnants of an erased global knowledge network that preceded our current civilization. The silent stone walls of Yeha stand as an unyielding, monumental rebuke to the comfortable linearity of modern history. The descent shifts down into the absolute dark of the earth, entering the colossal subterranean architecture of Sof Omar. This massive limestone cave system remains the longest, most structurally baffling underground river network across the entire continent. For thousands of meters, the Wild Wibe River roars through gigantic vaulted stone chambers, completely hidden from view. Look closely at the colossal stone pillars supporting the limestone ceilings. Their sheer structural alignment appears heavily calculated. Mainstream geological consensus firmly declares these perfectly fluted columns to be the random product of natural water erosion. But advanced fluid dynamic simulations reveal a darker anomaly that contradicts simple, uncontrolled hydraulic wear over time. The interior walls exhibit continuous, perfectly horizontal rock cuts that mirror heavy industrial drilling tracks rather than water. Why do certain deep, unexplored chambers within the system maintain a strictly regulated, anomalous acoustic resonance frequency? Look upward at the high vaulted ceilings, where natural sunlight pierces through narrow, flawlessly aligned limestone vertical slits. These openings are positioned precisely to channel intense shafts of daylight down onto specific geometric rock formations below. Unsanctioned subsurface radar profiles show these deep river branches follow a highly complex, pre-designed ancient hydraulic matrix. The total lack of any primitive excavation debris inside these deep limestone vaults leaves science completely empty-handed. Instead, academic institutions actively downplay the structural anomalies, attributing everything to millions of years of mindless dripping. But the physical evidence points toward a monumental prehistoric subterranean water system constructed long before our written records. The terrifying scale of Sof Omar leaves an immense, unmapped void in our understanding of early human engineering. The investigation now shifts toward the melting borders of the Danakil Depression, the most hostile environment on Earth. Beneath the violent yellow sulfur terracing lies a deep, unyielding physical anomaly that defies organic evolutionary frameworks. For decades, international geological conglomerates have strictly enforced restricted access zones across these toxic hydrothermal fields. Look closely at the hyper-perfect salt crystalline matrices forming under the intense heat. Their geometry is entirely non-random. Mainstream chemical consensus insists these intricate, mathematical repeating patterns are purely the result of salt evaporation cycles. But high-resolution mineralogical subsurface sampling reveals a dark, deeply unnerving composition pattern buried within the crust. Deep rock core samples exhibit anomalous traces of rare extraterrestrial isotopes found only inside ancient nickel-iron meteoric fragments. The precise geometric distribution of these toxic heavy metals across the salt flats suggests a deliberate ancient planetary seeding. Look across the boiling acidic lakes, where intense natural sunlight reflects off brilliant, blinding chemical crust formations. No primitive terrestrial ecosystem could have naturally concentrated these volatile compounds into such perfectly defined linear boundaries. Instead, the empirical physical data points toward a massive, highly calculated terraforming operation predating the human lineage. The academic world deliberately minimizes these harsh chemical irregularities, categorizing them as mere natural volcanic hot springs. But private archival data logs reveal that independent research teams were abruptly expelled after mapping deep tectonic fractures. We are staring directly at the radioactive scars of a primordial engineering event completely omitted from modern textbooks. The blinding, toxic expanses of Danakil remain an uncompromised, ancient monument to a history we are forbidden to know. The investigation now pivots back toward the mountain ridges of Axum, targeting the buried base of the fallen Titan. Beneath the fractured granite shards of the largest monolithic obelisk lies a structural anomaly that completely defies orthodox excavation. For centuries, the massive weight of this broken 500-ton pillar has sealed a deep subterranean shaft from human view. Look closely at the foundation platform where the granite cleanly snapped. The crystallization patterns indicate sudden, extreme thermal shock. Mainstream historical consensus firmly maintains that a localized rebellion or an earthquake caused the monumental collapse over time. But advanced chemical analysis of the rock face reveals a dark anomaly that contradicts simple mechanical fracturing or weatherization. The interior cracks exhibit continuous, glass-like vitrification tracks that mirror targeted high-energy bursts rather than simple structural decay. Why do the underground chambers directly beneath this specific site retain a highly irregular, intense, localized magnetic fields? Look across the vast field of ruins where intense natural sunlight highlights ancient grooves cut straight into the bedrock. These linear ruts run continuously for thousands of feet, forming a massive grid pattern across the harsh mountain landscape. Unsanctioned geophysical radar profiles show these straight-line cuts align perfectly with celestial movements from 10 millennia ago. The absolute absence of any discarded stone fragments around these long channels leaves orthodox archaeology completely empty-handed. Instead, institutional gatekeepers choose to completely ignore the grid, categorizing the monumental tracks as mere ancient agricultural irrigation. But the physical evidence points toward a gargantuan prehistoric launch platform or energy grid shattered by an unknown cataclysm. The silent, scorched ruins of Axum preserve a terrifying chapter of planetary history that was systematically wiped from existence. The investigation now forces us back to the remote limestone plateaus of Yeha, targeting the structural foundations. Beneath the oldest standing temple on the continent lies a deep, hidden layer of pitch-black volcanic glass. For centuries, the extreme weight of these colossal limestone blocks has sealed a subterranean chamber from human eyes. Look closely at the lower foundation joint lines. The dark residue shows intense, localized elemental vitrification. Mainstream archaeological consensus firmly maintains these structures were built for rudimentary pagan worship rituals by local tribes. But high-resolution subsurface molecular analysis of the limestone blocks reveals an anomaly that shatters this simple narrative. The inner stone pores contain traces of highly concentrated magnetic iron oxides that do not occur naturally here. Why do the primary structural alignments of these ancient walls correspond precisely to prehistoric cosmic radiation paths? Look across the vast, empty mountain valleys where intense natural sunlight illuminates deep geometric ruts in bedrock. These straight-line channels run for several miles, cutting through solid stone with completely uniform width and depth. Unsanctioned orbital satellite thermal imagery reveals these hidden grid lines connect all 6 major anomalies across East Africa. The total absence of any primitive iron tools or quarry waste nearby leaves orthodox historians completely empty-handed. Instead, institutional authorities choose to enforce a strict media blackout regarding the deep subsurface radar profiles. We are looking at the massive physical remnants of an ancient planetary energy grid operating before recorded history. The silent, interlocking limestone monoliths of Yeha remain an unyielding monument to an advanced civilization erased from time. The analytical focus shifts deeper into the geological crust, tracking massive thermal anomalies beneath the solid bedrock. For thousands of years, these dense layers of basalt have locked away a highly geometric subterranean structural blueprint. Look closely at the colossal subterranean fault lines where massive stone matrices show zero traces of tectonic friction. Mainstream archaeological consensus continues to push the boundary of coincidence, claiming natural crystallization caused these flawless structures. But high-resolution subterranean sonic imaging reveals an advanced, interconnected matrix that completely shatters the natural erosion model. The inner cavern surfaces preserve thousands of horizontal grooves that perfectly match high-energy thermal displacement tracks over time. Why do the primary subterranean axes of these massive stone vaults mirror exact celestial alignments from deep prehistory? Look across the vast, empty mountain chasms, where sharp, natural sunlight cuts directly through heavy volcanic sediment dust. These monumental straight-line channels run for scores of miles, carving through dense mountains with absolute uniform width. Unsanctioned orbital deep-penetrating radar arrays confirm these hidden grids form a unified planetary circuit across East Africa. The complete absence of primitive stone-cutting tools or historical quarry sites nearby leaves orthodox academics completely powerless. Instead, institutional gatekeepers enforce a strict, unyielding informational blockade regarding the structural vitrification data logs. We are staring directly at the titanic physical remnants of a global grid system built before our oceans formed. The silent, monumental stone architecture of these deep valleys stands as a permanent challenge to our written history. The staggering scale of these unmapped deep structures leaves an immense, terrifying void in modern historical science. The analytical focus now shifts toward the massive, unmapped subterranean water networks running directly under the Ethiopian plateaus. Beneath the oldest sedimentary rock layers lies a highly complex, interconnected matrix of flawlessly hollowed limestone vaults. For thousands of years, the intense geological weight of these mountains has sealed a monumental structural blueprint. Look closely at the colossal subterranean channels, where the heavy basalt stone walls show absolute geometric precision. Mainstream archaeological consensus continues to claim that uncontrolled natural hydraulic erosion created these massive symmetrical passages. But high-resolution subsurface seismic profiles reveal a dark, deeply unnerving pre-designed network that completely shatters that narrative. The inner stone surfaces preserve continuous, perfectly horizontal rock cuts that mirror high-energy industrial core drilling tracks. Why do the primary axes of these deep underground river vaults align flawlessly with precise celestial movements? Look across the vast, empty mountain abysses where intense natural sunlight cuts directly through the ancient dust. These monumental straight-line channels run continuously for scores of miles, scoring the landscape with perfectly uniform width. Unsanctioned, deep-penetrating satellite radar arrays confirm these hidden pipelines connect all 6 major anomalies across East Africa. The complete absence of primitive tools or historical quarry waste nearby leaves orthodox institutions completely empty-handed. Instead, academic authorities choose to enforce a strict information blockade regarding the deep subsurface vitrification logs. We are staring directly at the massive physical remnants of an ancient planetary hydraulic matrix operating before history. The silent, monumental stone architecture of these deep valleys stands as a permanent challenge to our written history. Every single anomalous coordinate across Ethiopia converges into one chilling reality that academic textbooks actively strive to omit. We are not tracing the erratic dawn of primitive nomadic tribes, but the heavy, scarred remnants of an engineered global epoch. As modern science continues to falter before these monolithic wonders, the true history of our world waits patiently in stone. The physical evidence stands sung-sung beneath the African sun, an unyielding monument to a truth that was systematically buried from view. This documentary is for education only, based on real sources. Theories are not facts.